Hey, what's up guys, Rafiel coming at you with another awesome Commander deck profile, and today's deck profile is going to be another theme deck. Rather than being tribal this time, we're going to focus around a specific character in the lore. Despite all the core 2019 product I have bought, I have yet to actually pull the Commander that I want for this deck, and as a result, I did end up making my own. Now, of course, the playmat we are using is a Nico Yazawa playmat, as it does reference the Commander we are playing today. So my playgroup had a meme for a couple of years, for about a year now, the theme of like Nico Nico Bolas as opposed to Nico Nico Ni. So our commander today is Nicol Bolas, the Ravager. So she is a 4 CMC legendary Elder Dragon. Obviously, it's a proxy for Nicol Bolas, the Ravager, the card Nicol Bolas in standard. It's a 4/4 flying Elder Dragon. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent chooses a card. We can pay 7 4 colors and one of each Grixis to exile it and return it transformed under our control as a sorcery. Now, of the Planeswalker side, comes in with 7 loyalty. We can plus 2 to draw 2 cards. Neg 3 to deal 10 damage to target creature or player, and I do believe this counts as commander damage, as it specifically says Nicol Bolas the Arisen deals the damage. We can neg 4 to put a target creature or planeswalker spell from any player's graveyard onto our field, and neg 12 to exile all but the bottom card of target player's library. I have done it more than once, but it doesn't go off very often. You'll probably just use the first 3 effects. So that's our commander out of the way, guys. Please remember, of course, I will be running a few proxies in this deck, as I am still finalizing the final build for the deck, but I am pretty happy with how it feels right now. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell button so you're updated whenever I make new content. And now that all that's out of the way, guys, let's get into the rest of the profile. Being that we are a Bolus deck, of course, we will be playing the other Bolus cards. So first off, we have Nicol Bolas, Planeswalker. It is an 8 CMC Planeswalker for 4 colorless, 1 blue, 2 black, and 1 red. Comes in with 5 loyalty. We can plus 3 to destroy target non-creature permanent. Neg 2 to gain control of target creature, and neg 9 to deal 7 damage to target creature, to target player, and that player discards 7 cards and then sacks 7 permanents. Obviously, the mana cost of this guy is pretty ridiculous. And there's a cheaper Planeswalker that we're going to show in a minute that does much, much more disgusting things. Next up, we have Nicol Bolas, the Deceiver. It's another 8 CMC Planeswalker. This time, he's 5 colorless and 1 of each Grixis. 4 comes in with 5 loyalty. Plus 3, we can force each opponent to lose 3 life unless they sack a non-land permanent or discard a card. Neg 3, destroy a target creature and draw a card. And neg 11 to deal 7 damage to each opponent, and then we draw 7 cards. So, pretty cool. Of course, the most important Planeswalker in the whole deck, past our commander, is Nicol Bolas, the God-Pharaoh. It is a 7 CMC Planeswalker, so it's cheaper than all 3 other Bolus cards to get out, if you take into account the transform and the cast cost of our commander. It comes in with 7 loyalty. We can plus 2 to force target player to exile the top card of their library until they hit a non-land permanent. Until the end of the turn, we can cast it. So this is probably what we're going to be doing most of the game, to seal our opponent's stuff, and that's kind of what the most of the deck is hopefully designed to do. We plus 1 to make each opponent exile 2 cards from their hand. It's not bad for a plus 1, but I still prefer the plus 2. We can neg 4 to deal 7 damage to target opponent or creature an opponent controls. And then neg 12 to exile each non-land permanent our opponent's control. Most of the time, you won't be using the last effect on this guy. In this deck, you'll mostly be using the first effect. Moving on to the rest of the creatures, guys, we have, first off, Wasp of the Bitter End. It's a 2 CMC 2/2 flying insect horror that when it comes in, as long as it's on the field, if we cast a Bolus Planeswalker spell, we can sack it to destroy target creature. Even if we don't get to fulfill that, a 2-drop 2/1 with flying is still very valuable for us. We have the Nightscape Familiar, is another 2 CMC zombie. So when he comes into play, as long as he's on the field, of course, all our blue and red spells cost 1 colorless less to cast, and he can be regenerated for his usual mana cost. We have the Augur of Bolus, which is a 2 CMC Merfolk Wizard for a 1/3, so a 2-drop 1/3 is pretty cool. And when he enters, we get to look at the top 3 cards of our library, add an instant or sorcery, reveal it, and put the rest on the bottom of our library in any order. We are Grixis, we do play a lot of instants, but Bolus particularly plays a lot of very powerful sorceries, so being able to add a board wipe to our hand theoretically quite quickly is very, very nice. We have the Baleful Streaks, probably one of the best 2-drop cards you could play in this deck. It is a 1/1 flying Death Touch, and when it enters, we draw a card, so very, very valuable card there. We have the Eternal of Harsh Truths. It is a 3 CMC 1/3 with a flick 2, so if it attacks and it's not blocked, and it's blocked, defending player loses 2 life, and then if it's not blocked, we draw a card. So either way, we gain something, which is really nice. We have the Night Vale Spectre. So it is a 3 CMC that can be played with green, blue, or black. And it's a 2/3 with flying, and whenever it deals damage to a player, they're forced to exile the top card of their library, and we may play exile cards cast from this effect, which is really cool. We have the Gonti, Lord of Luxury, a 4 CMC Etherborn Rogue with Death Touch for a 2/3, and when it enters battlefield, we look at the top 4 cards of target opponent's library, we exile one of them face down, and then put the rest of the bottom of their library in a random order, and as long as he's on the field, we may cast cards exiled from his effect as if they were ours, and we can cast it with any color mana we want, which is really cool. Next up, we have Neheb the Eternal, a very, very valuable card to play in this deck. It's a 5 CMC Zombie Minotaur Warrior, 4/6 with a flick 3. And then his ability is in your post-combat main phase. For every 1 life our opponents have lost this turn, we get to add 1 red. So if for some reason we manage to deal 10 damage to our opponent, we can cast an Apex of Power from our hand for free just off this guy. And if we end up hitting a Torment of Hell or off the Hellfire off that, we could potentially kill someone, which is pretty disgusting combo. Next up, we have the Mind Claw Shaman. It's a 5 CMC 2/2. When it enters, target opponent reveals their hand. We may cast an instant or sorcery from it without paying its mana cost. Very, very handy. We have the Notion Thief. It is a 4 CMC Human Rogue for a 3/1, and if an opponent would draw a card, except the first one he or she draws, instead extend the normal draw step. Instead of that, they skip it, and we get to draw one, which is really cool. We have the Locust God, because it's one of the gods that Bolus corrupted when he came to Amoket. And it also lets us make a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying. Every time we draw a card, we can pay 4 mana to draw a card. And then when he dies, we get to return to our hand at the beginning of the next end step. And we can use those tokens to either attack, but most of the time I'd probably just use them to block for my Planeswalkers. Our final creature, non-rampy creature, is our Nicol Bolas. The original, he's an 8 CMC for 2 colorless and 2 of each Grixis for a 7/7 Elder Dragon with flying. And at the beginning of the upkeep, we have to pay 1 of each Grixis, otherwise we lose him. But whenever he attacks and deals damage to a player, that player ditches their hand. So if you do draw your Wit's End and play that on someone and swing this at a dude, you're going to hit 2 players and make them not have a hand, which is pretty disgusting. Our final 2 creatures are a Burnished Heart and a Solemn Simulacrum, just for some nice needed ramp, as we are in Grixis and we don't have access to too much ramp. Moving on to our sorceries, guys, we're going to start off with some board wipes. We have our Fraying Omnipotence, which each player loses half of their life, discards half the cards in their hand, and sacks half their creatures rounded up. Now, this card can even the playing field pretty quickly, in the sense, unless one person is ridiculously overpopulated with tokens. But in most cases, if everyone's got creatures and you just have Planeswalkers, you're not going to get hit too much other this than losing cards in your hand and discarding your losing life. But you'll still have your Planeswalkers, and they can deal some damage to your opponent, which is pretty decent. So if you manage to hit someone's 40 life down to 20, if you've got 3 Bolus Planeswalkers out that can deal damage from their effects, you can just kill someone. We have Crux of Fate, another nice board wipe. Destroy all dragons or destroy all non-dragons. We do play dragons and non-dragons in our deck, but most of the cards we're going to be relying on for ourselves are Planeswalkers, so we don't really care. We do have a Planeswalker board wipe, which is the Mighty Hour of Devastation. Forces all creatures to lose indestructible till end of turn, and it deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-Bolus Planeswalker. So it will kill our commander if she's not transformed, but it will protect, it won't hit all our transformed Bolus, all our Bolus Planeswalkers, which is really nice. We have the Torment of Hailfire, which is one of our main win cons in the deck. Is an X black, and when it repeats the following process X times, each opponent loses 3 life unless they sack a non-land permanent or discard a card. This card can be used to absolutely decimate players who are behind, and if we've already whittled down our opponents who are ahead, this card can make us get so much plus. And especially there are ways to easily abuse this combo. You deal 10 damage with Neheb on the field, you use your Neheb to add 10 red mana, cast your Apex of Power, then you hit this off your Apex of Power, you add 10 black mana, and then of course you have 11 copies of this, you have 8 copies of this effect, which is ridiculous. We also have some hate cards, specific hate cards. So first off, we have Wit's End, which forces a player to discard their hand. We have the Mighty Cruel Ultimatum, which can actually be quite useful. So it's 2 blue 3 black and 2 red. For target opponent sacks a creature, ditches 3 cards, loses 5 life. You salvage a creature, draw 3 cards, and gain 5 life. This is a card you can use to really hate on that last person who's sitting on with just a little bit of life. Or if you really need to get one of your creatures back or really draw cards, this card is actually a lot more valuable than people actually think. We have the Dark Intermissions, and this is one of my favorite cards in the deck. It's a 5 CMC sorcery that forces each player to sack a creature or planeswalker and discard a card. Then you get a creature or planeswalker back from your bin and draw a card. If that wasn't enough, it also has an ability engrave, so when you cast a Bolus planeswalker, you can exile it to give that Bolus an extra loyalty counter when it enters. Sadly, you can't use that for your commander, but you can use it for your other 3 planeswalkers that live in your deck. Finally, the next is the Apex of Power. It is a 10 cost sorcery to exile the top 7 cards of your library, and until the end of the turn, you may cast non-land cards, exile this way, and if it's cast from your hand, you add 10 mana of any one color. So I've talked about the potential combo you can pull off with Neheb. Deal 10 damage with Neheb on the field, gain 10 mana, cast this from your hand, exile 7. If you hit Torment of Hellfire, holy crap. This is a really cool card, and I love its flavor text as well. I desire, so it shall be. Classic Bolus stuff there. We have some tutors. We have Diabolic Tutor and the Mastermind's Acquisition. Now, the Mastermind's Acquisition is a really interesting card. It has 2 effects. It has the usual search your library for a card, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. The second ability is choose a card you own from outside the game and put it in your hand. Now, I know in Standard, Modern, all that stuff with sideboards, you'd grab it from your sideboard, but as far as I'm aware, Commander has no sideboard. So if someone can give me an exact ruling on this card for Commander in the comments below, I would really appreciate that, guys. We have some draw power, of course, because we have blue. First off, we have the good old Divination, draw 2 cards. We have the Windfall, which again is a nice group hug card. Everybody draws, can get people off your back, hopefully a little bit. As they see you're playing Bolus, you are quite a disgusting person for playing Bolus in the first place. He has some disgusting cards at his disposal, but it's all in good fun. Bolus cards a lot of fun, and it's good to roleplay sometimes. You also have Deep Analysis. It's a 4 CMC draw spell that lets you draw 2 cards. Of course, we do play the artwork that has Bolus on it because we have a Bolus draw spell. And of course, does have Flashback, which is really nice. So we can cast it early on, and if we really need to draw some cards later, we can cast it. We also have the Siphon Mind, a really good draw spell for multiplayer games. Next up, we have the Mighty Slave of Bolus. Now, this is a nice little troll card, and Bolus does have some pretty cool troll cards, if you haven't already seen from some of the cards we have here. So it's a 5 CMC sorcery, so we gain control of target creature, untap it, it gains haste, and until the end of the turn, gains haste until the end of the turn. Unfortunately, we have to sack it at the end of the turn, but we do get to steal something from someone, potentially swing it at them, and then we sack it at the end of the turn. Kind of like a Usurper sort of thing, but it's only it's only till the end of turn, and we only get to do it once. So I think it's quite a fair troll card. We have the Ruinous Path, so it can destroy target creature or planeswalker. I know there are instances that do the same thing, but this does have the Awaken ability, so we can make a land, give it some counters, and then, use it for a block. Moving on to our enchantments, guys. We don't play too many enchantments, but the ones we do play are quite important. The first one we play is Waste Not. So it is a 2 CMC enchantment, and whenever an opponent discards a creature, we get a 2/2 black zombie creature token, obviously to attack or block for our commander. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, we add 2 black to our mana pool, and when an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, we draw a card. So we're forcing our opponents to discard a lot, as that's what Bolus does, and we've seen from a lot of our cards that do this. So we can abuse this card quite a lot. Next up, we have the Blood Reckoning. It is a 4-cost enchantment that basically says, don't swing me. It's more threatening later on in the game when people have lost a ton of life, and if they're swinging at you with a bunch of stuff, they're going to lose life. And what makes this card really good is it says attacks you or a planeswalker you control, and it's whenever a creature attacks. So if they're going to attack you with multiple creatures, they're going to lose quite a bit of life, which is very, very nice. And it does have some nice flavor text as well. There is no greater folly than standing against me, which is pretty true. We have one of the newest Bolus cards in our deck as well, called the Eldest Reborn. This is the one and only Saga we play in the deck, and it's actually quite a powerful Saga. It's a 5 CMC, and when it enters, its first Saga ability is each opponent sacks a creature or planeswalker. Its second is each opponent discards a card, and finally, its third one is put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, and we can also choose a planeswalker. So 9 times out of 10, I'm going to choose a Bolus to bring back with this card, and Bolus is on the artwork, so obviously you're going to want to bring back a Bolus. This card is so good, has absolutely no negs other than it being a 5 CMC, but I mean, it gives you so much plus. It is an enchantment, so if there is enchantment removal, it is vulnerable to that, but most of the people I play with don't play enchantment removal, so this card is pretty cool. Next up, we have the Patient Rebuilding. It's another key Bolus card from us from 2019. It is a 5 CMC enchantment. Beginning of our upkeep, target opponent mills 3 cards from their library into their graveyard, and we draw a land for each card put into the graveyard this way. So, nice way for us to draw some cards. It doesn't count as discarding, so it doesn't trigger Waste Not, but it does give us some hand, which is really nice. Next up, we have the Mighty Bolus Clutches. It is a 6 cost artifact, enchant permanent, and we control him permanent, and then permanent is legendary. So this is a nice card because it doesn't say enchant creature. If someone has a really irritating artifact, enchantment, or land, or anything like that, we can just take it for ourselves. It doesn't have to be a creature, which is one of the reasons why I really love this card. And has some nice references to the lore that I've been reading pretty recently, and it's quite interesting. Our final enchantment for the deck is the Mighty Elder Mastery. It is a 6 CMC enchantment to enchant creature. It gets +3/+3 and has flying. And whenever an enchanted creature deals damage to a player, that player has to discard 2 cards from their hand. So kind of having a similar effect to our Nicol Bolas Elder Dragon that lives in our deck, more on a downgraded sort of level, but will trigger our Waste Not, which is pretty cool. Moving on to our instants, guys. First off, we have our sort of, deck searcher sort of things, or thinners. We have a Brainstorm, a Mystical Tutor, and a Fact or Fiction. Pretty straightforward. I know these feature Jace, and Jace is an enemy of Bolus, but they are still really good to play in this deck. We have some nice removal as well, so we have our Terminate, our Magma Quake, and Chaos Warp. Now, Magma Quake we have to be really careful with because it does hit each Planeswalker, but it doesn't hit non-flying creatures. So obviously, if we haven't transformed our commander yet, we're fine. So we have to be really careful when we play this card. But it is only a normal 2 cost, and there are some really cool shenanigans you can pull off with Chaos Warp. Like if you know what the top card of your deck is and you've stolen something from your opponent, or if they're particularly if they're targeting or bouncing one of your boluses, or they're going to destroy one of your boluses, you can just Chaos Warp your bolus, put it back in your deck, and shuffle it, and then hopefully try and, pull the top card of your deck, which is try and get some good shenanigans off. We have the Imp's Mischief, which allows you to change the target of a spell with a single target, and you lose life equal to the spell's converted mana cost. So if they're hitting you with a cheap spell that's going to, basically, deal some damage to you, you can rebound it, or if they're going to bounce, specifically have a single target kill your thing, you can declare it and change it back to their stuff. And, you're going to lose life equal to the spell's cost, but it's better than, losing your Planeswalker. We have some more counterspells in the deck. Obviously, we have the Mystic Confluence. Interesting counterspell, 5 cost, has 3 abilities. We can also use it as a draw spell if we really need to. We have the Mighty Bolus counterspell, one of the Bolus counterspells, Soul Manipulation. It lets us choose 1 or 2. We can counter and or salvage a creature, which is really powerful. We have the Counter Squall, which is counter target non-creature spell. Its controller loses 2 life. We have Psychic Barrier, counter target creature spell. Its controller loses a life. The OG counter spell itself as well. Moving on to our artifacts, guys. We start off, of course, with our ramp. Soul Ring, pretty straightforward, and we are playing 1 each of the 3 signets that we have access to. So obviously Izzet, Rakdos, and Dimir, because we are in Grixis and we don't have too much access to ramp. We have mana rocks that aren't not our signets. So we have our Chromatic Lantern, Commander Sphere, which are pretty straightforward to play in Commander. Obviously, you guys don't have to play Chromatic Lantern; it is quite expensive, but I do find that I'm proxying it in a bunch of my decks, and one day I will get it, so I do end up running it. We have one of my favorite mana rocks in the game, which is the Visage of Bolus. It's a 4 CMC mana rock that adds 1 of each Grixis, on play specifically searches out a Nicol Bolas Planeswalker. Now it does search out Deceiver, which isn't the best target. I mean, it'd be amazing if it searched God-Pharaoh, but that'd be a bit too powerful. And Deceiver's not the worst one we can search, so it's really nice that we have a mana rock that can search one of our Planeswalkers. Gem of Becoming isn't the best card, but if we do have a small hand, we can pay 3 sack it, add 1 of each Grixis basic to our hand. So it is on theme. It could be worse, but kind Could be better, could be worse. We have Throne of the God-Pharaoh, which is pretty handy if we have a ton of tokens out on the field with our Locust God, or if we've stolen a bunch of stuff with our Bolus cards. Each opponent loses 1 life for each tapped creature we control. So really cool, easy to abuse 2-cost artifact. Next up we have Gate to the Afterlife and God-Pharaoh's Gift. Now these cards are very powerful. So, Gate to the Afterlife is whenever a non-creature token you control dies, you gain a life, and you may draw a card if you do ditch. Then if we have 7 or more creature cards in our graveyard, we can pay 2, sack it, and put God-Pharaoh's Gift straight on the field. Or you could just, cast God-Pharaoh's Gift for 7 later on in the game. And at the beginning of your turn, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, create a token copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie and it gains haste. So obviously this card is really easy to abuse later on. It does, I think, work better if you have more creatures in your deck, but we do have some nice creatures that we can make copies of, and most of the time we're going to be stealing our opponent's stuff. And our last artifact in the deck is the Mighty Lightning Greaves. So to finish it off, guys, we're going to take a look at our land base. So I hope, first off, guys, we have our Search Lands. We have Grixis Paranoma, Terramorphic Expanse, and Evolving Wilds. We do need to play these as we don't have ramp spells, like I've said many times before. We have our Gold Lands, we have Crumbling Necropolis, we have our Exotic Orchard, and our Command Tower. Again, I'm going to play as budget as I can with the lands, because lands can get pretty expensive. So we have some of our grey lands now. We have Command Reliquary Tower and Detection Tower. Now, Detection Tower is an interesting tech that I play that a lot of people don't actually recommend that I've played. But it taps for colorless mana, same as Reliquary Tower, but you can pay 1, tap it, and then creatures, your opponents and creatures they control with hexproof can be the target of spells and abilities you control. So you can actually use this to take control of stuff your opponents have with hexproof. So if their commander's sitting there with a Swiftfoot Boots, you can actually use Detection Tower to take control of it with your Bolus command, with your Bolus cards, which I think is pretty spicy tech. We have the Command Beacon, and we have the Gear Reach Sanctorium. So this lets us draw cards and forces them to discard, which can hit off our Waste Not. And of course, Command Beacon to allow us to return our Planeswalker to our hand if they become our command to our hand. They get a bit too expensive. We have Dunes of the Dead. Now, this is something that you don't really have to run in this deck, but when it does, it just adds colorless mana. But when it dies, you do get a 2/2 black zombie token. Obviously, it works better in zombie decks, but it is still a Bolus-themed card, so it's nice to run it. Bajuka Bog, if someone has a big scary bin and you know they play something like Living Death, you definitely want to play this. We do have dual lands-wise. We went sort of on the budget side of things. I don't have any of the blue-black ones in the deck right now because I actually don't own any of them. First off, we have Izzet Boilerworks. It is the double tap land, the bounce land. We only really play that. We have Swiftwater Cliffs, of course, Game 1 Life. I mean, you can play the shock lands if you really want to put money into the deck. But this is just, budget sort of things. And we do have a Necrome Refuge as well. And then, this is my own personal preference. I shouldn't be running this card in the deck at all. It is a vanilla tap land, and we know it's always bad to run vanilla tap lands. But this one specifically is a Bolus-themed tap land, and all printings of this card do have the flavor text. As far as I'm aware, they do have the flavor text. I do as I choose with what is mine, and it is all mine. So, obviously, I have to run this card because it's a Bolus-themed deck, and I'm allowed one guilty pleasure average vanilla tap land. Next up, we run, of course, 8 Swamps in the deck, as many of the Bolus full arts as I could get my hands on from Hour and Amoket, as most of our spells in the deck are black. So we need as much, or most of our symbols are black. We have 7 Mountains, again, running as many of the full arts as we can. So I think actually, yeah, I do have all the full arts for this one. For all my mountains. For some reason, I ended up with a lot of mountain full arts as opposed to the others. And finally, we have 7 islands to wrap up the rest of our land base. Sadly, only 2 Bolus full arts here. Hopefully, get the rest some more very, very soon. But anyway, guys, that is it for the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please remember to leave some comments below if you have any suggestions I could add. Remembering that I am trying to stay on theme with Bolus, kind of creating like a lore and more of a roleplay sort of deck, rather than I'm just going to make a Bolus deck that can smash you to pieces ridiculously easy. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, like I said at the start of the video. Feel free to check out my spider profile as well. I noticed a lot of you guys, if you were watching this after that, actually really enjoyed my spider profile, and I do see a lot of people actually do enjoy borrowing the deck and playing the deck, so it makes me feel good that a meme deck I created like that, or a meme deck that I was playing around with of the sense of seeing a spider commander, people really enjoyed. And hopefully you guys do enjoy this profile as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys for my next video.